Hidden in the Amazon, the girl who found a lost civilization * country of origin * Brazil. When 22-year-old archaeology student Isabella Rodriguez joins her professor's research expedition. Deep into the Amazon rainforest, she expects to catalog indigenous artifacts and write her thesis. What she doesn't expect is to stumble upon the discovery of a lifetime. A perfectly preserved ancient city hidden beneath centuries of jungle growth. But as Isabella explores the mysterious ruins of Yaquiruna, she realizes she's not alone. The descendants of this lost civilization still live there, protecting secrets that could change our understanding of pre-Columbian America forever. Now Isabella must choose between academic glory and respecting the wishes of a people who have remained hidden from the modern world for over 500 years. The humid Amazon air clung to Isabella Rodriguez's skin like a second layer, as she carefully brushed dirt away from what appeared to be another pottery fragment. At 22, the archaeology student from the University of Sao Paulo had dreamed of this moment her entire life, participating in a real expedition in the heart of the world's largest rainforest. But after 3 weeks of cataloging broken ceramics and stone tools, she was beginning to wonder if her romantic notions of archaeological discovery were just that. Romantic notions. Isabella, come look at this, called Dr. Marcus Hoffman, her thesis advisor and the expedition leader. The 58-year-old German archaeologist was crouched near what they had initially thought was just another fallen tree, but his excited tone suggested otherwise. Isabella set down her brush and walked over to where Dr. Hoffman was examining the moss-covered surface. Their base camp was situated in a clearing about 200 kilometers southwest of Manaus, in an area that local indigenous guides claimed held old spirits. A description that had initially excited the research team but had proven frustratingly vague. What do you see? Dr. Hoffman asked, pointing to the green-covered mound. Isabella studied the formation carefully. Her dark eyes, inherited from her Mexican grandmother, scanned the surface with the trained observation skills she'd developed during 4 years of archaeological study. At first glance, it looked like any of the hundreds of fallen trees they'd encountered, but something was different. The moss pattern is too uniform, she said slowly. And look at this edge, it's too straight to be natural. Exactly. Dr. Hoffman's weathered face broke into a grin. Help me clear some of this vegetation. Working together, they began carefully removing centuries of moss, vines, and accumulated forest debris. What emerged made Isabella's heart race. Beneath the green covering was unmistakably worked stone, not the rough field stone of typical indigenous construction, but precisely cut blocks fitted together with mathematical precision. Professor Isabella whispered, hardly daring to believe what she was seeing. This is architecture. Advanced architecture. Dr. Hoffman corrected, running his hands along the perfectly fitted stones. Look at this craftsmanship. No mortar, but the blocks fit so precisely you couldn't slide a knife blade between them. Isabella felt a thrill of discovery that made her forget the oppressive heat and humidity. Should we call the others? Dr. Hoffman considered this. Their expedition team consisted of 6 people: himself, Isabella, 2 other graduate students, a local guide named Joaquim, and a photographer documenting their work. Not yet. Let's see how extensive this is first. They spent the next 2 hours carefully clearing vegetation from what they now realized was a wall. As they worked, the structure revealed itself to be far more substantial than either had initially imagined. The wall extended in both directions, disappearing into the dense jungle undergrowth. Isabella, Dr. Hoffman said, sitting back on his heels and wiping sweat from his forehead. I think we may have found something significant. How significant? Isabella asked, though the excitement in her voice suggested she already suspected the answer. Potentially career-defining significant. That evening, as the team gathered around their campfire, Dr. Hoffman shared their discovery. The reaction was immediate and electric. Sarah Chen, a graduate student specializing in pre-Columbian ceramics, nearly dropped her dinner plate. Miguel Santos, who was working on his dissertation about Amazonian trade routes, started asking rapid-fire questions about the construction techniques. We need to proceed very carefully, Dr. Hoffman cautioned. If this is what I think it might be, we're looking at a major archaeological site. That means proper documentation, careful excavation, and most importantly, respect for any indigenous claims to the area. Joachim, their local guide, had been unusually quiet during the discussion. The 45-year-old Takuna man had lived in the region his entire life and had been invaluable in navigating the complex waterways and jungle paths that had brought them to this remote location. Joachim, Isabella said, noticing his thoughtful expression. Have you ever heard stories about this area? Any local legends or oral histories? Joachim was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. My grandfather told stories. He said finally, stories about the old people who lived here before the rubber tappers came. He said they built cities of stone and knew secrets that were lost when the sickness came. The sickness, Dr. Hoffman asked. Smallpox, probably, Miguel interjected. European diseases decimated indigenous populations throughout the Americas. My grandfather said some of the old people went deeper into the forest. Joachim continued. Said they took their secrets with them and never came back. Isabella felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cooling night air. Joachim, do you think there might be more structures out there? The guide looked at her with dark eyes that seemed to hold depths of knowledge she couldn't fathom. In the forest, Segurita, there are always more secrets than we know. That night, Isabella lay in her hammock listening to the symphony of jungle sounds, howler monkeys in the distance, the rustle of nocturnal animals, the constant buzz of insects. But her mind wasn't on the familiar sounds of the rainforest. Instead, she found herself imagining what lay hidden beneath centuries of vegetation. How extensive was the site they'd found? What kind of civilization had built those precisely fitted stone walls? And most intriguingly, what had happened to the people who built them? She must have dozed off, because the next thing she knew, she was being awakened by the sound of voices. Dawn was just breaking, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that filtered through the forest canopy. Dr. Hoffman and Joachim were standing near the edge of camp, engaged in what appeared to be a serious conversation. Isabella slipped out of her hammock and approached them quietly. Not just about the archaeology. Joachim was saying, there are protocols, traditions that must be respected. Of course. Dr. Hoffman replied, we have no intention of disturbing any sacred sites or violating cultural protocols. But surely you understand the scientific importance of what we might have found. Joachim noticed Isabella approaching and nodded to her. Buenos dias, Segurita. Good morning, Isabella replied. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Joachim was just explaining some of the cultural considerations we need to keep in mind. As we proceed, Dr. Hoffman said diplomatically. Isabella sensed there was more to the conversation than her professor was revealing. But she decided not to press. Are we continuing the excavation today? Carefully, Dr. Hoffman emphasized. Very carefully. The second day of excavation revealed the true scope of their discovery. What they had initially thought was a single wall turned out to be part of a much larger complex. As they carefully cleared vegetation and documented each revelation, a picture began to emerge of sophisticated urban planning that challenged conventional understanding of pre-Columbian Amazonian civilizations. Look at this, Sarah called out from about 50 meters away from the original wall. I've got what looks like a plaza or courtyard. Isabella hurried over to where Sarah was working. The graduate student had uncovered a large, flat area paved with the same precisely cut stones they'd found in the wall. But what made Isabella's breath catch was what surrounded the plaza, the unmistakable foundations of multiple buildings, their outlines clearly visible once you knew what to look for. This isn't just a building, Isabella said, the magnitude of the discovery hitting her. This is a city. Dr. Hoffman joined them, his face showing a mixture of excitement and concern. Isabella, I want you to start detailed documentation, Photographs, measurements, sketches, everything. Sarah, continue clearing the plaza area, but document every step. Miguel, start mapping the overall site layout. Asterisk, what about you, Professor? Isabella asked. Asterisk, I'm going to contact the university and the Brazilian archaeological authorities. A discovery of this magnitude requires official oversight. Asterisk, as the day progressed, Isabella found herself increasingly absorbed in the work. Each stone she uncovered, each architectural detail she documented, added to a growing picture of a sophisticated civilization that had thrived in the heart of the Amazon. The precision of the stonework rivaled anything she'd studied from the Inca or Maya civilizations, but the style was distinctly different, more organic, more integrated with the natural environment. It was while she was photographing a particularly intricate carving on what appeared to be a ceremonial platform that she noticed something odd. The carving depicted what looked like a procession of figures, but they seemed to be moving toward something that extended beyond the edge of the stone. Asterisk, Professor, she called out. I think this carving continues onto another stone. Asterisk, Dr. Hoffman came over to examine her find. You're right. Help me clear this area. Asterisk, working together, they uncovered a series of connected stones that formed a narrative frieze unlike anything Isabella had seen in her studies. The carvings depicted a complex story involving human figures, animals, and symbols that seemed to represent natural forces: water, wind, forest. Asterisk, this is incredible, Isabella breathed. It's like a historical record carved in stone. Asterisk, or a map, Dr. Hoffman said thoughtfully. Asterisk, a map. Asterisk, look at the way the figures are arranged. They're not just telling a story, they're showing a journey. And look here, he pointed to a section of the carving that showed figures entering what appeared to be a cave or tunnel. This might be showing the way to something. Asterisk, Isabella studied the carving more carefully. Dr. Hoffman was right. The figures did seem to be following a specific route, marked by distinctive geographical features that might still exist in the surrounding landscape. Asterisk, Professor, she said slowly, what if this isn't just showing a historical journey? What if it's showing the way to another site? Asterisk, Dr. Hoffman looked at her with the expression she'd come to recognize as his dangerous idea face. Isabella, that's exactly what I'm afraid you're thinking. Asterisk, we have to follow it, she said, her excitement overriding her usual caution. If there's another site, if this civilization was even more extensive than we thought. Asterisk, absolutely not, Dr. Hoffman said firmly. We have more than enough work here to keep us busy for months. We're not going to go wandering off into the jungle chasing carvings. Asterisk, but even as her professor spoke, Isabella was studying the frieze more carefully, memorizing the landmarks and symbols that marked the route. Her grandmother had always told her that curiosity was both her greatest strength and her greatest weakness. Looking at the mysterious carvings, Isabella suspected her grandmother might have been right on both counts. Asterisk, that evening, as the team discussed their findings around the campfire, Isabella found herself distracted by thoughts of the carved map. The figures in the frieze had seemed so purposeful, so determined in their journey toward whatever lay at the end of their route. What had driven them to leave their sophisticated city and venture deeper into the jungle? Asterisk, Isabella, Dr. Hoffman's voice broke through her reverie. You've been quiet tonight. What's on your mind? Asterisk, Isabella looked up to find the entire team watching her. I was just thinking about the people who built this place. Who were they? What happened to them? And why did they leave? Asterisk, those are the questions that will drive our research for years to come. Dr. Hoffman replied. But remember, good archaeology is patient archaeology. We don't rush to conclusions, and we don't take unnecessary risks. Asterisk, Isabella nodded. But privately she wondered if the greatest discoveries in history had ever been made by people who played it safe. Isabella woke before dawn on the fourth day of excavation, with a decision crystallizing in her mind. She had spent the previous evening studying the carved frieze by lamplight, sketching the symbols and landmarks that marked the mysterious journey depicted in stone. The more she studied it, the more convinced she became that the carvings were indeed a map, and that following it might lead to discoveries that would dwarf even their current find. She lay in her hammock listening to the gentle snores of her teammates and the awakening sounds of the jungle. Dr. Hoffman had made it clear that exploring beyond their current site was not an option. But Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. The carved figures hadn't just been depicting any journey. They had been showing something important, something that the ancient inhabitants of this city had considered significant enough to record in permanent stone. As the first light of dawn began filtering through the forest canopy, Isabella made her decision. She would follow the map, at least for a few hours, just to see if the landmarks depicted in the carvings actually existed. She wouldn't go far, just far enough to satisfy her curiosity, and perhaps gather evidence that would convince Dr. Hoffman to authorize a proper expedition. Moving quietly so as not to wake the others, Isabella gathered her essential supplies: water, her camera, a GPS device, her notebook, and a machete for clearing vegetation. She left a note explaining that she had gone for an early morning walk to photograph the surrounding area and would be back by noon. The carved map began with a distinctive rock formation that Isabella had noticed about half a kilometer from their camp, a cluster of boulders that formed a natural archway. According to the frieze, this was the starting point of the journey. Isabella found the formation easily and was struck by how accurately the ancient carvers had depicted it. The resemblance was unmistakable. From the rock archway, the carved map showed the route following a stream that curved through the forest like a serpent. Isabella found the stream and began following it, using her machete to clear a path through the dense undergrowth. The jungle was alive with sound: birds calling to each other, monkeys chattering in the canopy, the constant buzz of insects. But there was something else, something that made Isabella pause and listen more carefully. It was the absence of certain sounds. In the areas around their camp, there was always the distant noise of human activity, voices, the sound of tools, the crackling of their campfire. Here, following the ancient stream, there was only the pure sound of the forest itself. It was as if she had stepped back in time to an era when humans were just another species among many in the vast green world of the Amazon. After an hour of walking, Isabella came to the second landmark depicted in the carvings, a waterfall that cascaded down a series of natural stone steps. The ancient artists had captured not just the shape of the falls, but also the pool at its base and the distinctive way the water seemed to disappear into an underground channel. Isabella checked her GPS and made careful notes about the location. She was now about 3 kilometers from camp, farther than she had originally intended to go. But the accuracy of the carved map was so remarkable that she felt compelled to continue. If the ancient inhabitants had been this precise about the first 2 landmarks, what might she find at the journey's end? The third landmark proved more challenging to locate. According to the carvings, it was a tree of unusual size and shape, with roots that formed a natural shelter. Isabella spent nearly an hour searching the area before she found it, a massive cecropia tree, whose buttress roots had grown in such a way that they created a small, cave-like space beneath the trunk. As she approached the tree, Isabella noticed something that made her heart race. There were markings on the trunk, not natural formations, but deliberate carvings. They were weathered and partially overgrown with moss, but unmistakably human-made. The symbols matched some of those she had seen in the frieze back at the main site. Isabella photographed the tree and its carvings from every angle, her excitement building. She was definitely on the right track. The ancient map was leading her somewhere specific, somewhere important enough that the route had been marked with permanent waypoints. According to the carved frieze, there was one more landmark before the final destination, a hill with a distinctive double peak that the ancient artists had depicted with particular care. Isabella climbed a tall tree to get her bearings and spotted the formation about 2 kilometers to the northeast. The peaks were exactly as shown in the carvings, rising above the forest canopy like twin sentinels. It was while she was climbing down from the tree that Isabella realized she was no longer alone. At first, it was just a feeling, the sense of being watched, that raised the hair on the back of her neck. Then she heard it, the soft sound of footsteps moving through the forest with a stealth that spoke of long familiarity with the terrain. Isabella froze, her mind racing through possibilities. Jaguar, unlikely. The footsteps were too rhythmic, too purposeful. Another member of her team? Impossible. She had left them all sleeping back at camp. Slowly, carefully, Isabella turned around. Standing about 20 meters away, partially concealed by the dense vegetation, was a young man who appeared to be about her own age. His skin was the deep bronze of someone who had spent his life under the tropical sun, and his dark hair was adorned with feathers and beads in a style Isabella didn't recognize from any of the indigenous groups she had studied. What struck her most, however, was his clothing. Instead of the modern fabrics worn by contemporary indigenous peoples, he was dressed in what appeared to be traditional materials, woven cotton dyed in rich earth tones, with intricate patterns that seemed to echo the symbols she had been following on the carved map. For a long moment, they stared at each other in mutual surprise. Then the young man spoke, his voice carrying an accent Isabella couldn't place. "You follow the old path." Isabella's Portuguese was fluent, but the man had spoken in a dialect she didn't recognize, though somehow she understood his meaning. You speak Portuguese?" she asked hesitantly. The young man smiled, and Isabella noticed that his teeth were perfect and white. "I speak many languages. The question is, why do you follow the path of the ancestors?" "I'm an archaeologist," Isabella said, deciding that honesty was her best option. "I found carvings that seemed to show a route through the forest. I was curious about where it led." Curious, the young man repeated, as if testing the word. "Curiosity is dangerous in the forest, but also necessary." He stepped closer, and Isabella could see that he carried traditional weapons, a bow and arrows, a spear with an intricately carved point. "I am Auken, and you are far from your people." My name is Isabella. "And yes, I suppose I am far from my people. Are you from one of the local tribes? I didn't think anyone lived in this area." Auken's smile became enigmatic. "There are many things your people do not think. Come, if you truly follow the old path, then you must complete the journey." Complete the journey? But I don't even know where it leads. To answers, Auken said simply. "To the place where your questions end and new questions begin." Isabella hesitated. Every rational part of her mind told her that following a stranger into the depths of the Amazon was exactly the kind of decision that led to becoming a cautionary tale told to future archaeology students. But there was something about Auken that inspired trust, a calm confidence that suggested he was completely at home in this environment and perfectly capable of keeping her safe. More importantly, he had recognized the old path she was following. That suggested knowledge of the ancient civilization she was studying, knowledge that might be invaluable to her research. How far? She asked. Not far now. The sun will still be high when we arrive. Isabella checked her watch. It was already past 10 in the morning, which meant she had already missed her promised return time to camp. Dr. Hoffman would be worried, possibly even organizing a search party. But she was so close to whatever lay at the end of the ancient route that the thought of turning back now was unbearable. All right, she said. Lead the way. Auken nodded approvingly and set off through the forest with a fluid grace that made Isabella feel clumsy by comparison. He moved through the dense vegetation as if it were an open field, finding paths where she saw only impenetrable green walls. Isabella hurried to keep up, her excitement building with each step. They reached the double-peaked hill within an hour, and Auken led her to what appeared to be a solid wall of vegetation at its base. But as they approached, Isabella realized that the vines and hanging moss concealed an opening, not a natural cave, but a deliberately constructed entrance framed by the same precisely cut stones she had found at the main site. This is it, Auken said, gesturing toward the hidden entrance, the end of the old path. Are you prepared for what lies beyond? Isabella stared at the concealed doorway, her heart pounding with anticipation and a touch of fear. What lies beyond? The city that never fell, Auken replied, the place where the old knowledge lives on. The entrance led to a tunnel carved through solid rock. its walls covered with the same intricate symbols Isabella had been following on her journey. But these carvings were different, more elaborate, more detailed, as if the artists had known they were creating something meant to last for eternity. Aachen produced a torch from somewhere in his pack, and by its flickering light, Isabella could see that the tunnel extended far into the hillside. How long has this been here? She asked, her voice echoing off the stone walls. Since the time of the Great Sickness. Aachen replied, leading her deeper into the passage. When the pale strangers brought death to our people, the wise ones saw what was coming. They chose to preserve what could be preserved, to hide what must be hidden. Isabella felt a chill of understanding. You're talking about the Spanish conquest, the diseases that wiped out indigenous populations across the Americas. We call it the time of dying, Aachen said simply. Many of our people died, but some chose a different path. They came here, to the heart of the mountain, and built a new city, a hidden city. The tunnel began to slope upward, and Isabella could see light ahead, not the artificial light of Aachen's torch, but natural daylight filtering down from above. As they emerged from the passage, Isabella gasped at what she saw. They stood on a ledge overlooking a vast circular valley completely hidden within the double-peaked hill. But this was no natural formation. The entire valley had been terraced and cultivated, creating a series of concentric circles that rose toward the center like a green amphitheater. And throughout the terraces, connected by stone pathways and bridges, were buildings unlike anything Isabella had ever seen. The architecture was clearly related to the ruins she had been excavating. But these buildings were intact, lived in, vibrant with life. Smoke rose from cooking fires, people moved along the pathways, and the sound of voices and laughter drifted up from the valley floor. It was as if she had stepped through a portal into the past, into a world that had somehow survived unchanged. For 5 centuries, welcome to Yakiuna, Aachen said, watching her reaction with obvious pleasure. The city that the outside world forgot. Isabella stood transfixed, trying to process what she was seeing. This is impossible. A city this size, this organized, satellite imagery would have detected it. Government surveys, aerial photography, the ancestors were wise, Aachen explained. They chose this place carefully. The peaks hide us from above, and the jungle conceals the entrances to the outside world. This is just another hill in an endless forest. As they descended into the valley along a winding stone path, Isabella began to appreciate the true sophistication of what she was seeing. The terraced gardens were marvels of agricultural engineering, designed to maximize growing space while preventing erosion. The buildings were constructed with the same precise stonework she had found at the main site, but here she could see how the techniques had been adapted for different purposes. Residential structures, workshops, ceremonial buildings, even what appeared to be a sophisticated water management system. How many people live here? Isabella asked, noticing that they were beginning to attract attention from the city's inhabitants. About 3,000, Aachen replied, descendants of those who chose the hidden path, plus others who have joined us over the centuries. Others, sometimes people find their way here, as you did. Sometimes they are fleeing something in the outside world. Sometimes they are simply seeking something they cannot name. If they prove worthy, if they can respect our ways, they are welcome to stay. Isabella noticed that the people they passed were dressed similarly to Aachen, traditional materials and styles, but clearly well-made and practical. What struck her most was their apparent health and vitality. These were not people struggling to survive in isolation, but a thriving community that had found a way to live in harmony with their environment. Aachen called a voice from ahead. An older woman approached them, her graying hair adorned with flowers and her clothing marking her as someone of importance. She spoke rapidly in the same dialect Aachen had used earlier, her tone suggesting questions about Isabella's presence. Aachen replied in the same language, and Isabella caught enough to understand that he was explaining how he had found her following the old path. The woman studied Isabella with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see far more than they revealed. I am Itzel, the woman said. switching to accented but clear Portuguese. I am what you might call the keeper of traditions here. Auchan tells me you are an archaeologist, that you study the old ways. Yes, Isabella replied. I'm part of an expedition that found ruins about 10 kilometers from here. We've been trying to understand the civilization that built them. Itzel nodded thoughtfully. And what have you learned? Isabella found herself describing their discoveries. The sophisticated stonework, the urban planning, the carved frieze that had led her here. As she spoke, she noticed that a small crowd was gathering, listening to her words with obvious interest. You speak of our ancestors with respect, Itzel said when Isabella finished. That is good. Too often, outsiders see only what they wish to see, understand only what fits their preconceptions. I want to understand the truth, Isabella said, about who your people were, how they lived, what happened to them. What happened to them? Itzel smiled. Nothing happened to them. They are here, in us. Their knowledge lives on, their traditions continue. They did not disappear, they simply chose to remain hidden. Isabella felt a profound shift in her understanding. Everything she had been taught about pre-Columbian civilizations assumed that they had been destroyed or absorbed by European colonization. The idea that one might have survived intact, maintaining its traditions and knowledge for 5 centuries, challenged fundamental assumptions about the history of the Americas. Would you like to see how we live? Itzel asked. To understand what your ancestors built and what we have preserved, Isabella nodded eagerly, and Itzel began what turned into a comprehensive tour of the hidden city. They visited workshops where artisans created pottery, textiles, and tools using techniques passed down through generations. They saw gardens where traditional crops grew alongside medicinal plants, all cultivated using sophisticated agricultural methods that maximized yield, while maintaining soil health. In the city's center stood a magnificent temple observatory, its design allowing precise tracking of celestial movements. Itzel explained that the city's calendar was still based on astronomical observations, and that many important decisions were made in consultation with the movements of stars and planets. Your people in the outside world have forgotten how to listen to the sky, Itzel said as they climbed the temple steps. They have forgotten that we are part of something larger than ourselves. From the temple's highest platform, Isabella could see the entire city spread out below her. It was a masterpiece of urban planning, every element carefully designed to work in harmony with the natural environment. Water flowed through the city in carefully engineered channels, providing irrigation for the gardens and power for workshops. Waste was composted and recycled, creating a closed-loop system that left no trace on the surrounding forest. This is incredible, Isabella said. You've created a sustainable civilization. Your ancestors would be proud. Our ancestors are proud, Itzel corrected gently. They live on in our memories, our traditions, our daily practices. Death is not an ending here. It is a transformation. As the day progressed, Isabella found herself increasingly amazed by the sophistication of Yacuruna's society. They had developed advanced medical practices, combining traditional plant medicines with surgical techniques that rivaled modern methods. Their educational system ensured that every child learned not just practical skills, but also the history, philosophy, and spiritual traditions of their people. Perhaps most remarkably, they had maintained their isolation without becoming insular. The city's library contained books and documents in dozens of languages, and many residents spoke multiple tongues. They were aware of developments in the outside world, but had chosen to remain apart from them. How do you know about the outside world? Isabella asked as Itzel showed her through the library. We have always had scouts, Itzel explained, people who travel beyond our borders, who observe and learn and return with knowledge. We are hidden, but we are not ignorant. And no one has ever revealed your location? Those who are chosen to be scouts are chosen carefully. They understand that the survival of our people depends on our secrecy. And besides, Itzel smiled. Who would believe them? A hidden city in the Amazon. Most outsiders would dismiss such claims as fantasy. As evening approached, Isabella realized that she had been in Yakaruna for nearly 8 hours. Dr. Hoffman and her teammates would be frantic with worry, possibly even organizing rescue parties. But the thought of leaving this incredible place, of returning to the outside world without fully understanding what she had discovered, was almost unbearable. I have to go back, she said reluctantly. My team will be worried about me. Of course, Itzel said. But first, there is something you must understand. You have been shown something that few outsiders have ever seen. This knowledge comes with responsibility. Isabella felt the weight of that responsibility settling on her shoulders. What kind of responsibility? The responsibility to choose, Itzel replied, between the glory that would come from revealing our existence to your academic world and the respect that comes from honoring our desire to remain hidden. The journey back to the main camp took place in contemplative silence. Aachen had offered to guide Isabella back, and as they retraced the ancient path through the forest, she found herself grappling with the most difficult decision of her young life. The discovery of Yakaruna was beyond anything she had ever dreamed of, a living, breathing example of pre-Columbian civilization that had survived intact for over 5 centuries. Publishing this discovery would make her career, establish her as one of the foremost archaeologists of her generation, and rewrite textbooks about the history of the Americas. But it would also destroy the very thing that made the discovery so remarkable. You are troubled, Aachen observed as they paused beside the waterfall that marked the second landmark on the ancient route. Wouldn't you be? Isabella replied, your people have trusted me with their greatest secret. How do I honor that trust while also honoring my obligations as a scientist? Aachen considered this question carefully. In our tradition, knowledge is not owned by individuals. It belongs to the community, to be shared when sharing serves the greater good. The question you must ask yourself is, who would benefit from this knowledge, and who would be harmed? Isabella had been asking herself that same question for hours. The academic benefits were obvious: the advancement of human knowledge, the insights into sustainable living, the proof that indigenous civilizations were far more sophisticated than most people realized. But the costs were equally clear. Once Yakaruna's location was revealed, it would become a destination for researchers, tourists, government officials, and curiosity seekers. The very isolation that had allowed the city to survive would be destroyed. There might be a middle path, Isabella said slowly, an idea beginning to form in her mind. Tell me. What if the knowledge could be shared without revealing the location? What if your people could choose what to share and what to keep secret? Aachen stopped walking and turned to face her. Explain. Your people have developed incredible innovations in agriculture, medicine, architecture, social organization. Some of that knowledge could benefit the outside world without compromising your security. And in return, you could gain access to outside knowledge that might be useful to your community. You speak of partnership rather than discovery. Exactly. Instead of treating Yakaruna as a subject to be studied, what if we treated it as a colleague to be consulted? Aachen smiled. For the first time since they had left the hidden city. This is why Itzel chose to show you our home. She saw in you someone who might understand the difference between taking knowledge and receiving it as a gift. They reached the rock archway that marked the beginning of the ancient path. Just as the sun was setting, in the distance, Isabella could see the lights of her team's camp and hear voices calling her name. Dr. Hoffman's voice was among them, and she could detect the worry and frustration in his tone. Isabella. Dr. Hoffman's voice carried clearly through the evening air. Isabella. Where are you? I'm here. She called back, emerging from the forest with Aachen beside her. The relief on her professor's face was immediately replaced by concern and anger. Do you have any idea how worried we've been? You've been gone for 10 hours. We were about to call for a search and rescue team. I'm sorry, Professor. I found something. Someone who could help with our research. Dr. Hoffman noticed Aachen for the first time, and his expression shifted to professional curiosity. And you are? I am Aachen, the young man replied in careful Portuguese. I am a guide. Like Joaquim, I found your student following an old trail through the forest. Asterisk an old trail? Isabella took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would determine the course of her entire career. Professor, I need to tell you about something incredible. But first, I need your word that you'll listen to the whole story before making any decisions. Asterisk Dr. Hoffman studied her face in the flickering light of the campfire. Isabella, what have you gotten yourself into? Asterisk over the next 2 hours, Isabella told her story. She described following the carved map, meeting Auken, and discovering the entrance to the hidden valley. But when it came to describing Yakuruna itself, she chose her words carefully. She spoke of a small indigenous community that had maintained traditional ways of life, of people who possessed remarkable knowledge about sustainable living and traditional crafts. She did not mention the city's size, its sophistication, or the fact that it represented a surviving pre-Columbian civilization. So you're telling me, Dr. Hoffman said when she finished, that there's an uncontacted indigenous group living in this area? Asterisk not uncontacted, Isabella corrected. They're aware of the outside world, but they've chosen to maintain their traditional lifestyle, and they might be willing to share some of their knowledge with us if we approach them respectfully. Asterisk Dr. Hoffman turned to Auken. Is this true? Would your people be willing to speak with us about the archaeological site we've found? Asterisk Auken nodded slowly. Some of our elders remember the old stories about that place. They might be willing to share what they know, if they believe you will treat the knowledge with respect. Asterisk of course we would, Dr. Hoffman said immediately. Any information about the site's original inhabitants would be invaluable to our research. Asterisk then perhaps a meeting can be arranged, Auken said, but it must be done properly. With the right protocols, I will need to speak with our elders first. Asterisk. Over the following days, Isabella found herself living a carefully constructed double life. During the day, she worked with her team on the main archaeological site, documenting their findings and helping to piece together the story of the ancient city. But in the evenings, she met secretly with Auken to plan how to facilitate meaningful exchange between her academic world and his hidden community. Asterisk the solution they developed was elegant in its simplicity. Auken would bring selected elders from Yakuruna to visit the main archaeological site, where they could share oral histories and traditional knowledge about the ruins. In return, Dr. Hoffman's team would share their archaeological findings and scientific methods. Both groups would benefit from the exchange, but Yakuruna's location and true nature would remain secret. Asterisk the first meeting took place a week after Isabella's discovery of the hidden city. 3 elderly members of Yakuruna's council, led by Itzel, arrived at the main camp just after dawn. To Dr. Hoffman and the rest of the team, they appeared to be exactly what Isabella had described: indigenous people who had maintained traditional ways of life and possessed remarkable knowledge about their ancestors. Asterisk these carvings, Itzel said, studying the frieze that had led Isabella to Yakuruna, tell the story of the Great Migration. When the sickness came, when the old city could no longer be defended, the people followed this path to safety. Asterisk safety where? Dr. Hoffman asked. Asterisk to the place where the ancestors still watch over us. Itzel replied diplomatically, to the place where the old ways are preserved. Asterisk over the course of several days, the elders from Yakuruna shared an incredible wealth of knowledge. They explained the meaning of symbols that had puzzled the archaeological team, described the purposes of various buildings and structures, and provided context for artifacts that had been mysterious. In return, Dr. Hoffman's team shared their scientific methods, their carbon dating results, and their theories about the site's historical significance. Asterisk this is remarkable, Dr. Hoffman said to Isabella on the final evening of the elders' visit. The level of cultural continuity is extraordinary. It's as if these people are living bridges to the past. Asterisk Isabella smiled, knowing that her professor's metaphor was more accurate than he realized. It makes you think about what we might learn if we approached indigenous communities as partners, rather than subjects of study. Asterisk indeed it does. In fact, I'm thinking of proposing a new model for archaeological research, one that emphasizes collaboration with descendant communities from the very beginning of a project. That night, as the team celebrated their successful collaboration around the campfire, Isabella felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had found a way to honor both her scientific training and her respect for Yakiruna's autonomy. The knowledge gained from their exchange would advance understanding of pre-Columbian civilizations, while respecting the wishes of the people who had preserved that knowledge. But more than that, she had discovered something about herself. The curiosity that had driven her to follow the ancient path had led not just to archaeological discovery, but to a new understanding of what it meant to be a responsible scientist in a world where knowledge and power were intimately connected. 6 months later, Dr. Hoffman's team published their findings about the archaeological site. The paper, co-authored with Isabella and including contributions from traditional knowledge holders from the local indigenous community, was hailed as a groundbreaking example of collaborative archaeology. It won several academic awards and established new protocols for working with indigenous communities. Isabella completed her thesis based on the project and was accepted into a prestigious doctoral program, but she also maintained her connection with Yakiruna, serving as an unofficial liaison between the hidden city and the outside world. She helped facilitate carefully controlled exchanges of knowledge and resources, always ensuring that Yakiruna's autonomy and secrecy were preserved. Years later, when Isabella had become Dr. Rodriguez and was leading her own archaeological expeditions, she would often think about the choice she had made in the Amazon rainforest. She had given up the chance for immediate fame and glory, but she had gained something far more valuable: the knowledge that true discovery was not about taking from the past, but about building bridges between past and present, between different ways of knowing and being in the world. And sometimes, on quiet evenings in her office, she would take out the photographs she had secretly taken in Yakiruna and remember the incredible city hidden in the heart of the Amazon. She would think about Itzel and Aachen and all the others who had trusted her with their secret, and she would smile, knowing that some discoveries were too precious to share with the world and too important to keep entirely to herself. The hidden city of Yakiruna remained hidden, its people continuing their ancient traditions while selectively engaging with the modern world on their own terms. And Isabella Rodriguez, the curious young archaeologist who had stumbled upon the discovery of a lifetime, had learned that sometimes the greatest courage lay not in revealing secrets, but in keeping them. In the end, she had discovered something more valuable than any lost city. She had discovered the wisdom to know when knowledge should be shared and when it should be protected, when curiosity should be pursued and when it should be tempered with respect. It was a lesson that would guide her for the rest of her career, and a secret that would connect her forever to the hidden world she had found in the heart of the Amazon. What would you do? Keep the secret or reveal the discovery? Share your thoughts in the comments. Like if you'd protect the hidden city, and subscribe for more incredible adventure stories that will leave you questioning everything.